Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 3, Episode 19. Today is Monday, May the 9th, 2016. My name is Graham Perro. With me tonight is Melissa Daphne. Tyler Fitch is hopefully going to join us later, but I'm not sure about that. Bunch of things to talk about tonight. Obviously, two really exciting playoff games, and we're down to the final four now, so we'll get into that a little later. First off, I want to start off with something that's new in the NLL this offseason, this postseason, that is, that I didn't see an awful lot of fanfare for. I kind of figured the league would be making a big announcement about this, but they kind of said, here's this new thing, so go look at it. There's a new website called NLLTV.com, which seems to be the new streaming video provider for the league. So basically the league said all playoff games will be available on this website and go, and they didn't really say much more about it other than they named the name of the company, which was New Lion, I believe is what they're called. And that will be their new streaming provider. And I guess this company also does Major League Soccer, which is of course where Commissioner Sakevich is from, so he probably is familiar with them from his time there. But I believe they do the NBA and the NFL and a bunch of other leagues as well. So it sounds like they've got a company that really knows what they're doing. Both of the games were available on this new service. So they were free. I wasn't able to actually watch either of the games live, so I don't know what that was like. But I did watch a replay, which in itself is a pretty awesome thing, because that certainly wasn't available anytime earlier this year. So the Minnesota New England game is available on
Not Minnesota.
Did I say Minnesota? Good Lord. Yeah, okay. So the Georgia New England, the Minnesota Philadelphia game on Friday on, if you go to LTV, that right there, the Colorado Calgary game is not there for some reason. Yeah, so like I said, this seems like a kind of a big deal. The NLL is switching providers and got their own channel and everything, and there's replays available. So my guess is this is something that the new commissioner wanted to get in place, and he said that a number of times. He wanted to make sure that they had a streaming video partner that would work going forward. And so my guess is he's been working on that since he came into his office, and they're kind of trying it out over the playoffs and see what it's like, see how it works, see what they need to fix, and then during the off season they can fix all those things, and then next season it'll be live and may or may not be a paid service. I don't know. Yeah, so that might be a good thing.
You know, I haven't watched anything on it yet, and I can already say I am super impressed. It was already super easy to find the game, get it started. Nothing like dealing with Fox. I mean, ESPN's pretty good. You just usually have to do a few filters. But with Fox, I can never seem to find the games half the time. And I already found the game that I'd want, and I could start watching it right now. If this is any indication, this is awesome stuff. I'm looking forward to watching this. And the fact that I thought I wasn't going to get to watch this for Wolves game. So the fact that now I can watch this, I am really excited. I didn't even know to check because I assumed it was on Fox. So
yeah,
awesome.
I didn't think to check either. I just happened to go to the site because they announced something about it, and I decided to go there just to see what was there. And hey, there's a replay. That's cool. A couple of other, I want to say minor things, but these are kind of cool. Down at the bottom, you have your standard stop and pause buttons and restart the video and so on. Now, this is during the replay. Obviously, you can't do all of these things when it's live. But there's a button for skip ahead 10 seconds and a button for go back 10 seconds. And when you're watching a replay, that's awesome because you get to the commercial and you don't want to see Dane Smith sending money to his brother via Western Union again. So you just click the fast when you're beyond the commercial. There's also a slow motion button, which is kind of cool. If you, something awesome happens and you go back 10 seconds, and then you click the slow motion button and it goes forward in slow motion. I don't know how much slower it is than normal speed, but it's certainly slow enough that if you're watching to see if somebody stepped on the crease or if the ball went in before the shot clock or whatever it was that you want to see, you'll be able to see it in slow motion. So that's pretty slick. Like I said, I don't know if those will be available if you're watching live or if it's just on the replay, but either way, that's pretty darn cool.
Well, and that's already better than some of our other options, because ESPN, when you try and fast forward or anything, it goes the whole game, and so then you're kind of stuck watching it. And the whole user experience with Fox was just horrible, so I don't even remember if I could skip past in the games or not. I feel like I couldn't. Well, no, of course not, because it was live. So yeah, you couldn't pause it or anything, which was always a bummer.
Yeah, the closest they had was when a couple of years ago when we were on YouTube. I mean, you could obviously, even when watching live, you could go back 10 seconds, back a few minutes or whatever, and watch sort of a semi-instant replay, and then click the live button again, and you were back live again. I tried to do that with Fox, and it just kind of didn't work. And the NLL TV thing last year, I tried to do that with that as well, and it just didn't work very well. So hopefully this will work. And one other thing I wanted to mention was on this week's Stealth Classified podcast, Jake Elliott didn't explain, but he mentioned what the problem was with YouTube, and this is why I think the league switched away from YouTube, which is something that we all thought was a great idea. And the problem is, of course, the NLL plays music during games, and YouTube is not a big fan of copyright infringement issues. So, I mean, anytime you upload a video that has music in it, if they recognize the music, I mean, I think they basically scan every video that's uploaded for music, and if they find music that they recognize, they'll shut you down. So I don't know if all the NLL games are still there, because there's always music in the background, and I'm sure the YouTube filters will find it. But I believe that was part of the issue with YouTube, which is unfortunate. So the other news, and I guess we'll get to the games themselves in a minute, but the other news that was announced once New England won their game is that game one of the division final series in the East will be Buffalo at New England, which will be next Monday night, which is obviously odd. This will be the first Monday night game in NLL history. I guess the Black Wolves Arena was just booked all weekend, so they had no choice but to move it to Monday. They originally announced Tuesday, and then they moved it back to Monday. I think they've had arena issues in the past, and usually what happens is they just swap, and so Buffalo would host game one, and New England would host game two. Maybe Buffalo decided we would rather host game two because we've earned that right to host game two and then host the mini game if it's necessary. And so could be the Bandits just decided they didn't want to give that up, so this was the only other option. But it's a little weird, and I'm kind of scared at what the attendance might be like.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect attendance to be very good for a Monday night game. I mean, they struggle with a Friday night game where at least you can have the weekend to recover. But a Monday night game, you got to go to work the next morning. At least most of us do.
So it's certainly going to suck attendance-wise for the fans. But I guess one of the bigger issues is, are all the players going to be able to get there? Because I know a lot of players have issues with, or some players anyway, have issues with Friday night games. You mentioned that was an issue for Adam Jones a lot of the times this year. And if they're going to have trouble getting to the arena on Friday night, what's it going to be like on Monday? So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. You'd hope that you're not going to get to the Monday night game and find that Sean Evans isn't available or something, because that's going to be an awfully big problem for the Black Bulls, or if Dane Smith can't show up, or Anthony Cosmo or something. So hopefully we have a full team on both sides, but that's a bit unfortunate. But such is the nature of the NLL. We've seen that before. So we'll move on to the games themselves. I wasn't able to see either of them live, as I mentioned before. I did watch the replay of the Georgia-New England fourth quarter and overtime, so I saw a little bit of it. But I mean, if you're looking for close, exciting games, this was your weekend. This game was tied 8 different times, and considering there's a whole bunch of scoring in the third quarter. I don't have the numbers right with me, but yeah, it seemed like a whole bunch of scoring in the third quarter, and then in the last 15 minutes of the game, there were like 2 goals, and that was it. So both goaltenders. Sorry.
The second quarter was big too. There was 5 goals apiece in the second. Georgia had 5 in the third. New England had 3. So those middle quarters were definitely pretty high scoring.
Let me get the stats up here, as I usually do before the show starts, but not this time. Yeah, 18 goals in the second and the third combined, and only 3 in the fourth. So, yeah, and 2 of the goals, and there's only 3 goals in the fourth quarter, and 2 of them were in the first 2 minutes. So, yeah, so the goaltending and the defense really came through in the fourth quarter until overtime when Sean Evans managed to sneak one by Brody McDonald, and that was the end of it. Yeah, one weird thing that I noticed in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left or thereabouts in the game, the Swarm are on the power play because Joel White took a dumb penalty, which was odd because in overtime, Joel White took another dumb penalty. I mean, pretty much any penalty in overtime is a dumb penalty, but this was particularly dumb. And both of those cases led to a goal. Actually, sorry, the first one didn't lead to the goal, but the overtime one did. But in any case, the Swarm are on the power play. The Black Wolves get possession after a Swarm shot. They run down in transition, and almost immediately they take a shot. And it's not like whoever was there had a really great view, or they decided this is I got a breakaway or something like that. It was a shot through traffic. It wasn't that great a shot, but if you're killing a penalty in the late minutes of a tied game, don't you want to kill off that penalty? Don't you want to run around for 29 seconds and then take a shot? That would make sense to me. Maybe there's something about that I'm missing, but that's what I thought. The crowd was pretty loud, judging by the video feed anyway, but it sounded pretty darn loud there, so that was good to hear. And so what was the attendance? Attendance was 3,200, so I mean, that's not especially loud. We've certainly got 5 times that many people at a Mammoth or a Bandits game, but it sounded pretty loud in there, so that was good.
Well, it's a smaller arena, so their noise carries, and so they could have been just as loud.
That could be true. Tyler did mention one thing. He left a note for us here. There was a penalty on Brett Manny with about 3.5 minutes left in the fourth, and what he said was could have been a dagger in the Black Wolves season, which is definitely true. Luckily, they managed to, well, luckily for the Black Wolves, that is, they managed to kill off that penalty. And then the Swarm took a dumb penalty. And like I said, with Joel White, they managed to kill that one off. So, yeah, so some smart special teams there in the fourth quarter.
Well, there's at least one that I don't think I see very often. I'm assuming it's intentional contact on a dead ball, because it says INT contact, dead ball.
Yep. Yeah, intentional contact on a dead ball. That's just basically once the whistle's blown, you checked somebody.
So yeah, that's not a penalty you see very often. Usually, it's cross-checking or slashing, or
it's today's NLL fact of the day was the top 5 penalties that were called this year, and that was actually number 5. Wow. So holding was 1, I think roughing was 2, and illegal cross-checking was up there. I can't remember exactly. But intentional now, I don't know if they had a different name for this before, because it seems like it's called a lot, or maybe it's just something that was added in the last couple of years. But yeah, anytime there's a dead ball when the whistle's been blown and there's checking going on, they'll usually call it.
Yeah, I just don't feel like I've seen the intentional contact. I mean, I definitely agree. It's been called, so I wonder if it's gone under roughing or, like you said, something else, because I just don't remember reading
Yeah,
that much. For it to be number 5 on your list, I'm like, wait, really? This is the first time I feel like I've seen this in ages. So
yeah, every time I see it, I think, oh, that's that new one, and I'm not sure if it's actually a new one or if they just renamed an old one, but I'm not sure what the old one would have been. But yeah, it does seem like it's something that you don't see all that often, but it did show up on my list a fair bit. Okay, the other game was Calgary at Colorado, and yeah, if you thought the other one was close and exciting, this was at least as close and exciting. Um, I didn't see any of this one, which is kind of unfortunate. But from the sounds of things, this is one of the best games of the year.
yeah, you definitely want to go back and watch this one, Graham. This was just an awesome game. It was back and forth. I don't think the lead ever got more than 2, and
Nope.
it was just crazy. It was a complete battle of the goalies. I would have to say that regardless of the loss, Ward really needs to be proud of himself, because him and Poulin were the biggest difference in this game. The third quarter, there was only 3 goals scored total, and the overtime was going so long. I was starting to think we were going to see a double overtime. And then, of course, that got my brain going, is there even a precedence for that? Which there actually was. A friend pulled it up, and apparently Orlando and I think it was in Boston, they actually went to a double overtime in a February game. So we do have precedence for a double overtime.
Yeah, I do remember seeing somebody, I guess it was probably the Roughnecks, tweeting that this was the longest overtime game in history, and it turned out to be the longest overtime game in playoff history, probably because of that game that you mentioned that was longer.
So yeah, that was their little tweet was definitely causing some confusion, because it's like, wait a sec, what is the actual longest? So it was definitely one of those games that you just were kind of on the edge of your seat because you didn't have any idea who was going to win. You know, I felt Calgary was going to take this game for a while, and you know, there was a lot of errant passes and really bad shots from some of the Mammoth players. I don't know what was going on with them. They were not looking like as cohesive of a unit as they normally have been. They definitely had some rough spots, which is when Calgary kind of took the lead and started to run away with it a little bit. But, you know, especially in overtime, it was just so back and forth, just each side just trying to get it in, and both goalies just stonewalling them. And Poulin faced some really good shots, you know, and as did Ward. There was some shots that you're just sitting there going, how did he make that? That was just phenomenal. I would say that most of the goals, it seemed, were kind of on a screen. And so they were those goals that are just going to be difficult for any goalie to stop. And it was just one of those games that it was just intense, and definitely a battle of the goalies. It was really good to watch those guys really stand on their head and just do a great job. There was definitely some penalties. I was starting to wonder, I'd say about fourth quarter, towards the end there, because Calgary just kind of started falling apart a little bit. And it made me wonder if they were going to unravel to the point that the Mammoth were going to be able to steal the win. But they pulled it together and managed to come up with it. But it was definitely one of those games. I know a lot of fans were excited because, you know, we get the 3 refs back, which is always nice. And although there was a lot of things called, Calgary got away with some really blatant too many men a few times. So there was definitely a lot of things not called too for both sides. But it was a good game. So if you haven't watched this one, you need to go and watch this one for sure. Don't miss it.
Just definitely keep checking the NLLTV.com, and hopefully that one gets put up at some point. I did tweet to the NLL this afternoon and say that game's not there. Is it going to be? But I haven't heard back yet.
I know for us in the US, it is on ESPN3. So if you go to ESPN3.com, you can watch it there because I just double checked it earlier today. So I don't know
Okay.
about our Canadian people, but hopefully our Canadian friends can find a spot to watch it too.
Well, I will check out tsn.ca and see if it's available there. And if not, I do work for an American company. So if I bring up my VPN, then everybody thinks I'm in Philadelphia. So maybe the ESPN thing will work there. I'll give that a try. Tyler did leave a message about this one as well. And this, I guess, speaks to what you were saying about missing shots. He said John Grant played so poorly that Andy Lindahl started talking about if this would be Junior's last game during the fourth quarter. And personally, I think, this is Tyler, I think that was generous. He could have brought those lines out in the first quarter with the marshmallow shots Grant was taking then.
Yeah, I would agree. He had some shots on net that were nowhere near the net that you're like, where were you shooting that? Coming from somebody who can't hardly shoot, they were off. I don't know if he just wasn't feeling well or what, but yeah, he had a lot of off shots. And then there was also the frustrating ones because when they work well, his behind the back, between the leg shots are highlight reel worthy. But the problem is he does them so much that everybody pretty much expects them, and like 98% of them don't go in. And so you just watch him take shot after shot after shot that maybe another player would have had a better angle on, and see it get blocked, and then you see him going to the other side because he tried to do a behind the back shot for the 9th time. So
yeah, I'm starting to wonder if that was something that he would do in the earlier part of his career an awful lot because nobody expected it. And he started to get really good at it. I imagine he probably practices the hell out of it. And he started to get really good at it. A lot of other players weren't doing it, so this was kind of his thing. And now enough other players do it, and of course he's been doing it for 15 or however many years. Everybody sees it coming. It's not a surprise anymore. It's not, oh my God, look at what happened. So it's not the outstanding play that it used to be because everybody expects it. So I wonder if that's a part of his game that he used to sort of rely on and just kind of not there anymore.
Well, and that could be, not to mention he might not be as quick at it as he once was. I mean, don't want to pull the H card, but his reflexes may not be as quick. So he might have been able to pull these off much faster, and now he does telegraph it a little more. I know one of my frustrations is especially in the early parts of the season, you can tell whenever he's playing with a bunch of players who aren't familiar with his style because they haven't played with him, because he likes to do the no-look passes too. And so you'll see them and they're like, oh, wait, where'd that ball come from? And it's because he did it behind the back and, these weird things, which, yeah, when it works, it's great. And once the guys start to get used to how he passes, there was definitely times where you could see it kind of help, create an angle. And so they'd get an open shot, things like that. So there was a place for it. But when you see dropped passes at key moments because, he wung it over his shoulder to a guy that didn't know it was coming at him, as a fan, it's just the most frustrating thing to watch.
Yeah, so Junior took 15 shots and had 0 goals. Adam Jones actually shot more. He had 17, but he had 4 goals. And Jeremy Noble also had 4 goals on only 11 shots. So there was a whole lot of shooting going on there. Curtis Dixon had 21 shots. I think that might be a record for the season. I'm not even sure, but he had 5 goals, so you can't really blame him too much.
21 shots is a lot. I mean, when you really think about it, I would say in both these games, the shots on goal was very high. For Colorado and Calgary, Colorado had 67 to Calgary's 58. And then when you look at New England and Georgia had 66 to New England's 52. So there was definitely a lot of shots going on. And so I think that really shows how much the goalies were standing on their head because they were doing great standing up to that.
And that was the highest total in shots this season. Dane Smith and Logan Schuss both hit 20 in one game. And then there was a bunch of 18s and 17s, most of which were Sean Evans and Adam Jones, actually. And Dane Smith had a bunch in there as well. But yeah, nobody hit 21. So congratulations to Curtis Dixon.
So just adding, sorry, before we go on that,
Yep.
since you were bringing on how many shots on goal everyone had, John Grant Jr. had 8 shots off goal that were tracked.
Wow.
So, yeah, so he essentially had 23 shots around the net and had a goose egg. So
7 shots. That's off net. That's kind of nasty. All right. Oh, another thing that Tyler mentioned, an incredible resurgence by Mike Poulin this season. Totally agree. He was goaltender of the year in 2012, I think, or maybe 2013. And then since then, it's been the Matt Vince show. And Poulin really kind of fell off. I don't know, a couple of years ago, he just kind of fell off and had the really lousy beginnings of the season. And they threw Frankie Chiliano in there as a rookie and said, you got to save us because Poulin's not doing so well. And Frankie did a great job. And it looked as if, and I think for that season, it was basically Frankie was the starter and Poulin would back him up every now and again. And he did a pretty decent job in the backup role. And then last year, it was Frankie again. And I think Poulin played a little more. And then this year, it seems to have swapped back again. So Poulin's having an outstanding season, but Frankie's doing a great job as a backup. So, yeah, it's kind of odds what's happened with the Calgary goalies going back and forth. But kudos to Mike Poulin for an outstanding comeback after a couple of off seasons.
Well, and I think that just goes to highlight, why you need 2 solid goalies, because one of your goalies may just have an off season. We saw it with Ward. We've seen it. I think one of the biggest reasons that the Mammoth actually made it to the Cup game in 2006 was, unfortunately, G. Nash kind of started falling apart in the playoff game. And Chris Levis came in, did a really great job, and then Nash was right back on and was a brick wall again the rest of the playoff series. But if we wouldn't have had a goalie as strong as Levis was that game, we wouldn't have made it in 2006 either. So I think having that tandem that, really you can rely on both of them is very important.
Yeah, there's certainly nothing better, I imagine, as a defender, to know that regardless of whether it's your starter or your backup, and in some teams they don't have a starter and a backup, they just have 2 starters that they swap between. But if you're a defender and you don't care which one of them is in net, you have that much confidence in them. That's got to be a great thing, because that's what the Bandits are going through this year. When Anthony Cosmo's on, he's one of the best in the league. If he has an off night, they put DeRuccio in there, and he's been excellent. So, yeah, it's a thing that the Stealth certainly know from a few years ago when they had Tyler Richards and Matt Royk, and they would go back and forth.
The Swarm too, before they moved to Minnesota.
Yep, the Swarm did that for a couple of years. The Rock had that last year with Nick Rose and Brandon Miller. Miller hasn't had a great season this year, so it wasn't the same thing. But Rose did have a great year, so yeah, so that was a little different from last year. But yeah, having a backup goalie you can rely on like that is key.
Well, and like you said, I would definitely second that. It has to be a good feeling for the defense, knowing that whoever's in net, they just got to focus on their job, and they can kind of not have to worry about that secondary. Whereas if you don't have that faith in your goalie, you're probably always going, okay, I need to really make sure, nothing gets close, and you just make more mistakes because you're kind of worried about the guy behind you. So.
Right. All right, we'll get on to our predictions now. It was a pretty good week, I would say, mainly because I'm 2-0, considering I finished the season just over 500, but in 3rd place of the 3 of us. So to start off 2-0 is pretty nice. So obviously got the New England and Calgary games correct. Melissa, you also got both of those correct. Tyler got New England right, but picked Colorado, and he actually put a caveat on there. He said Colorado if Adam Jones is playing. did play, and they lost anyway. So, but they were, I mean, obviously both games went to overtime, and they were both really close, so it could have just as easily been the other way around. So, like I said, I'm 2-0. Melissa is also 2-0, and Tyler is 1-1. Instead of calling or predicting games for the playoffs, we decided to predict the series. So rather than just say who's going to win the next game, we went through and picked who we think are going to win the series. And since you started pretty much every game all season long because you had a great season, I'm going to start this way just because I feel like it. And of course, I have a pretty tough pick to start with. First one we're going to do is New England Buffalo, although their game is actually second. And I hummed and hawed about this one for a while. And after I made my pick, Tyler made a good point that Evan Kirk is playing better than Anthony Cosmo right now, so that certainly gives the Black Wolves an edge. My first thought was Dane Smith versus Sean Evans, and I mean, both are excellent players. Smith had an outstanding season. Evans also did. Didn't have quite the number, but still had I mean, they were both, I think, within 10 points of each other during the regular season. I don't remember exactly, but so they both have a super awesome offensive stud. They both have really good goaltending. I would say Buffalo's backup goaltending is probably better than New England's, but if the starters play the way they can, it won't really matter who the backups are. Both have pretty solid defenses. Buffalo probably has a faster transition game. There's all kinds of things. So I'm going to go with Buffalo, and it would not surprise me to see this go the full 2.5, 3 games, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, so I'm going to go for Buffalo in the East and Calgary, Saskatchewan in the West. Calgary's going to put up a good fight, but I think this is going to be the Rush, and so it'll be the Rush and the Bandits meeting in the final. Melissa, you can go next.
Well, like Graham said, I really vacillated back and forth between New England and Buffalo. It's a really tough choice. This is one of those games that you just are kind of excited for because you just really expect that this is going to be hard-hitting and it's really going to come down to just the wire. I agree with Graham that this is probably going to go to 3 games. Tyler also says that he thinks it's going to go 3 games, and I think we're all right. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a couple of overtime periods in there too. So I don't think either team is going to underestimate the other. I don't think either team is going to give any amount of leeway. I think if they both come out and play the way we know they can and have been, this is just going to be an awesome game. I'm really excited for this one. So after much deliberation, I'm going to go with New England. But I will say I'm not only confident in that because it's like Buffalo is just as strong of a choice. And I think that's really exciting to be going into a playoff game where you really don't have that strong, yeah, so-and-so is going to win. Because we have had those seasons where you look at and you're like, wow, this just isn't even a matchup. You know so-and-so is going to win this one. And they do, so it's no surprise. This one is anyone's game. It's going to be who shows up and plays pretty much both games or all 3 games, which we all think is going to go. So we'll go with New England. For Calgary and Saskatchewan, I am also going with the Rush. I think Calgary can be a solid team, but I think the Rush just have everything they need going on together right now, and they have pretty much all season. And there's also that part of me that, I do want to see the Rush do really well since the fan base has really embraced them, and I do like the Rush. I really want one of those new jerseys. I love that green, so that's my goal to add for my jersey collection. So the new Rush
So
jerseys.
a lot of people seem to be complaining about the green, but I'm really starting to like it as well. I mean, I like the black and silver that the Rush had in Edmonton, but I really like that green bit on the new Rush jersey. So I may have to look for one of those as well.
Yeah, it just pops, and I've always had a kind of soft spot since the Rush came into the league for them, and so to see them just doing well, after being the underdogs for so long, and I'm really happy to see him do well. And so all my Calgary friends are like, no, you cannot be cheering for the Rush this weekend. And it's like, sorry, guys. I'm going with the Rush. Just the way it is.
You can also say, hey, Calgary knocked my team out, so I'm going to cheer against them as opposed to cheer for the Rush.
But I do like both teams.
I don't think anybody would blame me for that either.
Yeah, they may not, but I like both teams. But I am going to go with the Rush.
All right, and we do have Tyler's picks here. He said New England in 3. And as I said, Evan Kirk is doing better than Cosmo right now. So both of you guys took New England. I went with Buffalo. But all three of us have gone Saskatchewan. Tyler actually said Rush in 2. Yeah, so I guess we all think Saskatchewan will be representing the West, and 2/3 of us think New England will be representing the East. So I guess the question next is when the heck are we going to record next week? It might be, seeing as the Monday night, and a couple of us are busy on Tuesday night and Wednesday night, we may just record on Monday night after the game, which will be fresh in our minds, and we'll all be able to watch it. And so we may not be recording till 9:30 or 10 or thereabouts Eastern time next Monday night. Yeah, so that will do it. This has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Melissa and the absent Tyler, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.